now correct me if I'm wrong here, you've personally taken 4 or 5 organizations from virtually no annuity production to over $1 billion in
Yes,
for
I
annual
have.
production. How many times have you done that?
Four?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Annuity Fundamentals. I am your host, Kylie Malat, joined with our co-host, Ryan Anderson, and today we have a very special guest. I know I say that a lot, but today really is a very special guest, and the reason that Ryan and I both are here today. We have Doug McDermott with us. Doug McDermott is one of the pillars in the annuity industry, and today we're going to go over, you guessed it, fundamentals. So it's a pleasure to work with Doug one-on-one, but to hear him speak is it's on another level. So thank you so much for joining us, Doug. We're happy to have you. I'm sure our audience is stoked to finally get to hear from you. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I look forward to the opportunity with the two of you today.
Well, fantastic. Now, Doug, you and I have known each other for about 10 years, and we formerly worked together at another IMO where you were their national director in training for annuity production, annuity sales. You took that organization in just about 10 years from $20 million in annual production to over $1 billion. I think it was 1.2 billion in annual production when you left them. And then you and I kind of crossed paths, reconnected here about a year and a half ago, and we formed Annuity Fundamentals. And so, with that, this is the podcast for that organization, and we have taken it and are now making it a national training organization for all sorts of independent insurance agents, different IMOs, different agencies. And the goal is to help them become asset protectors, moving from health to the wealth and everything in between. And that is what we talk about. And one of the things that I want to really kind of talk about here is that we had an event here this last week or 2 weeks ago in Boise, Idaho, where we brought in a bunch of agents from around the country and train them on fundamentals. It was a 1 day event. We had some different carriers there to kind of talk about some of their solutions. But the thing about it is that when we were there and we did that, there's a lot of things really stood out to me and about how significant and how really the industry is starved for the things that we have. That they can go online and learn about caps, spreads, different indexes. They can go on to the different companies' websites, learn about the different products. But nobody out there is going through and teaching them how do I go from a MedSup or an Advantage plan into an annuity in a scoped appointment? How do I properly introduce myself so that I can actually be thought of as an asset protector? And how can I go through and identify an opportunity and then move through the sales process to enroll these folks in a solution that'll benefit their lives? And that is really the backbone and what Annuity Fundamentals is all about. And knowing that, I mean, as one of the people, the partners and the founders of the company, with along with yourself, that Kylie and I were sitting there and we looked at that and we saw it, we believed it, but in that day, in that event, it really sunk home to me personally. It was a real epiphany moment for me that there is a huge need for what we have going on out here. What was your opinion of that event that we had? And as far as kind of talking about that, we had some people there. Again, we had we had people from DC to Washington DC to Las Vegas to Idaho. We actually held it in Boise, and we had folks from Oklahoma coming in. What are your thoughts on that as far as that goes when it comes to the fundamentals and the events and the things that were taught there that day?
Well, what was really interesting to me, looking into the eyes of those that were in attendance, they were starving for knowledge, for one, but they were starving for knowledge that could be relatable at a fundamental level. That's where they were at. In the breaks, they came up and said, how grateful they were and how overwhelming, in their opinion, it was to even think of annuities, how to bring it into their practice with their med-sups and going over how they felt intimidated, how they literally felt overwhelmed, but how grateful they were and explaining the simplicity of annuities and going over the fundamentals. And yet how grateful that felt. They said, I actually feel I can do this. And so that was an interesting concept of having them relate to how simple we were trying to present the fundamentals, and yet trying to help them learn the fundamentals with words, phrases, sentences, history, etc., but helping them taking them through different steps of fundamentals so that they can have the confidence and the mindset of saying, I can do this.
Absolutely. So, Doug, in your experience, you've been doing this for 40 years. So you've been in plenty of offices all around the country, doing events and so forth. So you have really put this message out about the importance of fundamentals. Why did you decide, instead of we're doing annuities 100 through 104, why did you decide to stick there and stick with the fundamentals instead of helping agents go from, selling $1 million to selling 10, instead of going through 105 to 110? Why have you always stuck and stayed true to the fundamentals?
Well, with looking at the fundamentals, I found no one else was teaching fundamentals. No one else was training, fundamentals. And everyone in the IMO space was after the 1 million, the 2 million person, and to try to get them to the next level. Being able to actually help those to that level, get them going, I felt personally that the greatest opportunity for success in this industry is training those that don't have the basic skills presently, and the potential in the future is working with that with growth in building annuity production and premium. So I looked in who was training annuities. No one was doing it. No insurance company, no IMO was in that marketplace, but all of them were in the advanced marketplace. And in the advanced marketplace, what's happening is everyone was just stealing each other's agents. That's all they were doing, is they were ripping off one IMO, going to another, and as soon as they got there, 2 or 3 other IMOs would come rip off that person from the IMO that just ripped them off from somebody else. And I found that no one of those people ripping off from everybody else was doing any training on fundamentals. No insurance company. And I said, you know what, there's a large model here of success and an opportunity to build a business and a practice around training the fundamentals. So that's why I pursued that area. And also, when I got in the industry, I knew nothing about annuities. And it was interesting that the hybrid captive agency system that I got involved with, how that individual, the agency manager, forced me to learn the fundamentals, but more importantly, to train it in front of the entire group. That was when I realized, oh my goodness, no one really had any real skills in learning those fundamentals. And so that's the reason why I pursued it and built a practice and a company around it.
As we're talking about that, I want to just really be clear with something here. I think back, and I've often talked about when I first started with my last IMO, my initial IMO, they always talked about the system. You got to learn the system, the system, the system. And I've used this story in many of our podcasts, that I kept expecting somebody to hand me a binder that said the system on it. And it wasn't it. I was just oblivious to the fact that there was all these little pieces out there that coupled together were the system. Now, I want to be really clear here with this. When we're talking the fundamentals, when we're talking about the things that you need to in order to sell an annuity, it is, what is an annuity? As far as what types of annuities are there out there? How do they get their credited gains? Is it an investment? Is it an insurance contract? What is the history of an annuity? How do we go through what problems will an annuity solve? How do I recognize the opportunity for an annuity? How do I go through, and how do I actually go through the process of collecting the fact finders, the appropriate information from the client to determine if there's a need for an annuity? How do I go back and, in a compliant way, put together a case design and present that to the client? And then how do I close it? How do I go through and make sure that it's an appropriate way to do it? How do I protect myself from putting the wrong product in there? How do I go through and do the follow-ups on the anniversary dates, and on and on and on and on. When we talk about fundamentals, that's what we're talking about, and it is the approach that we've taken that Doug's talking about is the number one, the high level stuff, which Doug is a master at, and that is convincing yourself, and the problem is really between your ears, that you can do this, you are worthy to do this, and having these substantial paychecks and compensation is something that you are actually should be eligible to receive and totally skilled enough to receive. And then what Kylie and I then go through and do is after you've had that, we teach you the boots on the ground, step one, step two, step three, step four, and to go through and do that. And that, when we say fundamentals, that's what we mean. And most companies are, all right, you've got your MedSup, go in the back there, grab yourself an annuity brochure, read it, and then offer it to your client next week. If you've got a question, here's a phone number, here's the website, send it in, they'll send you a case design, then go off and close it. And you don't know anything about it or how to go through it. I mean, that's kind of how it is out there. And there's companies that they'll give you a lot of those things, which are wonderful, but they're starting up here, and what I need is down here, this space here. And it was shocking to me because, I mean, at that event we had, you were up there and you did talk to folks for an hour or so. Then we brought in some other individuals from the different companies and from different, as far as they're talking about different solutions and things, wonderful individuals, that highly skilled in their business. But at the end of that, I got up after them and I said, okay, how many people in here understood what he just said? 3 people raised their hands, and those 3 people, all of them had securities licenses. So they weren't straight up insurance agents. So, and then we spun it, and as far as the illustrated is like that's why you have them. They're there to help you. But it really, in that moment, it impressed upon me the importance of what Annuity Fundamentals does and how they can go into a agency or an IMO and work with these high producing, highly skilled agents or these moderately producing, moderately skilled agents and just change their lives and the company's lives. I mean, did I get that right, do you think?
I think, the sharing of the fundamentals and knowing, as what Kylie mentioned, is Annuities 101, 102, 103, 104. They are actually steps in education and in the fundamentals. And you don't go to 105 unless you have 101 through 104 done. And if you think that you're going to be able to be at the 105 level, it's like those in the audience when you're getting talked way over your head and you're getting all these great fancy stuff being said, but what is that doing to your confidence?
Yeah.
Those in the room that really want to learn how to go from health to wealth, being able to learn. And what I've experienced over my 40 years is training the fundamentals. If you do it in a systematic way, you will help those succeed. And you do it by doing it the same way over and over and over again. People say, well, how do you do this over and over again? I love what I do. I love helping people to succeed. And because I have such a passion on helping people succeed, but knowing that they cannot succeed unless they have the fundamentals. And it is a process.
Absolutely. I can relate to what Ryan's saying, and Doug, you're just speaking the truth to me because I was a brand new agent. I think I had been in with that IMO for 3 weeks before you came in. So I had the privilege of learning the fundamentals at the start. So right out the gate, I remember you coming in and you said, if you use these words, sentences, and phrases, and you put these into this system, into what you're already doing, you will get into the annuity space and you will be successful. And I ran with that. I didn't realize until 5 years later that what a gift that was to happen so soon in my career. And the fact that there are people in our classes or who book an appointment exploratory phone call with me that have been in the business selling Medicare for 3, 5, 6, 7 years and they don't know how to get into the annuity space. And so sometimes I think, gosh, this is pretty basic. The things we're going over in class is pretty basic, like how to introduce yourself. And it really just dawned upon me like, oh my gosh, the training lacks so much in insurance altogether that people really don't even know what to say, where to start. And I think when you think, oh, fundamentals, oh, that's the easy stuff. You're right. It is the easiest stuff, but it's the basics that people just don't ever grasp. And I know in our class, the biggest thing is, what do I say? What do I say? And you were very upfront. These words, sentences, phrases. I mean, as simple as, instead of saying, is that okay? Is that all right with you? Asking
It's
for
little
permission.
things.
It's the little things
Absolutely.
that really change the entire appointment that me, right? I've been here for 5 years thinking that's easy. Isn't everyone doing that? But the answer is no.
No.
They are not.
No. And see, I love to go out in the field with individuals. And I've done that all my career. And how do you mentor someone is you help them by teaching them or literally training them that what you are training really works. And you don't veer off that training. You literally keep to the basics and the structures. And once they see that, they look at you like, I can do that. I can actually do that. And when they taste it, that first success, they go, hey, I really did do that. And they were enrolling into these programs, being able to have the success and the little success. Well, guess what little success does? If you teach them the correct system, they use that and then they can get to the next level. To write the first $1 million annuity by itself, you don't start with a $1 million annuity. You have to do what?
A bunch of the little ones over
That's
and over and
exactly
over
right.
again.
Little ones over and over again. And when I'm asked, well, how many little ones did you do? And I says, I cannot even tell you how many little ones I did. My second year in the business, out of that first 6 months, and how many little ones did I do until I was able to get to the next level? I remember that hybrid captive agency. The general manager there would look we had a very big group, and they would look at everyone and says, here's someone, and they knew all who it was because the board showed how many enrollments I had. I had more than all of them almost combined. And you think, well, that's ridiculous, but it was true, because what was I willing to do?
Whatever it took.
Yeah, whatever it took.
Fundamentals.
And I didn't care the size.
Yeah.
I knew I had to learn to get to the larger cases, but I wrote so many little cases at first. And what are little now, and compared to then, I wrote IRAs that were $2,000 in then, but I kept doing it until I got to the SEPs. Then I started rolling over, and I was able to get to that next level, and then started getting the 100,000s from getting the 10s and the 2s and the 15s, the 50s. But that's what I'm trying to train, is it's okay to get smaller cases so that you can really learn the fundamentals. And then how to enroll. What are the words that you say? The simplicity that I shared with the two of you. I would always ask, what would you feel comfortable enrolling into annuity today? I never told them how much, what they had to do after showing the illustration. It's what would they feel comfortable. Whatever their answer was the correct answer. It was what was a value for them. But it helped me. I didn't have lapses. Still, in 40 years, I've had less than 5 lapses in 44 years. I think that's pretty lucky, right? Well, guess why? It was what was of value for them. Being able to help them really understand the basics, and then I went on the next basics of training. And I kept doing the training, and I reviewed the first before I went the second. And when I got the second, before I went to the third, I reviewed the second and the first. When I got to the fourth level of Annuity 104, I still trained third, second, and first. Why do you think that was? That the key was they need to have the confidence to advance, to be able to feel so comfortable with 1, 2, and 3 that they could actually give it back to me. And when they did, they realized, you know what? I could do this in any home, any office, and that's when they got the confidence. Because when the question was asked of them on virtually anything fundamentally, they were able to answer it with enthusiasm, and their clients would look at them like, wow, that actually makes sense. And they would share a different question on what they had heard from another financial advisor. You would answer it with enthusiasm, and they'd laugh and says, well, I guess that other financial advisor really doesn't know anything about annuities. But it was those little simple things.
As we're talking about stuff like that and those little simple things, that those are huge game changers. Now, something that I learned early on in my career, that the ability to sell, the ability to close a lot of cases is one skill set, and the ability to train somebody to close a lot of cases is a completely different skill set. And I've been in a lot of industries, and this one included, where, oh, that person is a great closer. They'll make a great manager. Let's make them a manager. They can teach those skills to somebody else, and we go for it and go and go and go and do it. And quite often, what you'll see is that manager, now that agent who is promoted to be a manager, then flounders. Their production drops, their team drops, and they move on because they don't want to be a manager. They don't have that skill set. And going through and trying to find an organization, and this is one of the things here that we really like about Annuity Fundamentals, is what you're talking about, is let's stay in our lanes. If you are a great salesperson, if you've got a team of great salespeople and you would like to move them into annuities, that's what we do. We are exceptional trainers, and there's a big difference between going through and selling something and being able to teach somebody else how to sell something. I've got an associate that I've worked with in the past. She's one of the most gifted salespeople I've ever met. She could just her personality, and she instinctively knows where to take the conversation. Nobody ever trained her how to do that. She just knew it, or she picked it up. And then I put her with an equally talented young lady, and I said, all right, go off and train her. And it was a train wreck. And it was the thought was like, well, you go into the person's home and you just ask them the right questions and they'll answer it. Well, what are those questions? Well, it depends, and back and forth, but they could not articulate it,
Right.
which
They
comes
couldn't
back to
systemize.
that's what I was going to say. We have to have a system, and to be able to go through. And one of the things that we talk about, and you can talk about this, Kylie, is when we go through. This is step one, step two. There's 9 steps to a first-time appointment that we share with folks. And so, if I'm blowing it up and I'm getting this same objection every time, I know that there's a problem with step 4. That
Yep.
the agent is messing it up there. Or if I'm going in to train with an agent and I know these are the steps they're supposed to go through and do, and all of a sudden we're skipping from step 3 to step 7 to step 5 to step 9, that, okay, there's a process here, and it's much easier to train to that. And that's one of the things I love about the fundamental piece to it is, here they are. We're trainers. We're not recruiters. We're not, we're not an IMO, but we help agencies, IMOs, and individual agents go through and add these skills to their business model. And we're able to do it time after time after time. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, you've personally taken 4 or 5 organizations from virtually no annuity production to over $1 billion
Yes,
for
I
annual
have.
production. How many times have you done that?
4?
4 times. Okay, so this is, and basically doing these same processes that we're shooting for number 5 here, to be able to go from over
Identical.
to $1 billion in
Identical
production,
concepts. Yep.
and go from there. And I think, and it's just amazing to me how this works. And when people hear that, they're like, oh, it can't be that easy. Well, let's go back and look at Coach Lombardi? Here's a football. John Wooden, here's a basketball. Every one of those really famous coaches that have just huge success. Here's the fundamental. This is a basketball. This is how you dribble. This is how you tie your shoe. Let me show you how to put your socks on. Annuities, the thought process is the same.
Identical is what we do with the fundamentals of annuities. It is that simple. And when others look at it, they laugh. He says, this is too fundamental. It's too much below me. Well, guess what? Those that are being taught the fundamentals blow by those that think that it's too fundamentals. And we've done this over and over again. I could give you names of organizations who we've trained from scratch, and look where they're at today, and they still laugh when they go up against another IMO and says, yes, it's the fundamentals that we were taught, and we had that. When I was selling the annuity store, one of the things that was interesting was they asked about my personal production, because all other IMOs that they were purchasing, no one did personal production. Zero. Guess what they were good at doing? Recruiting.
Okay. Yeah.
Recruiting. And then talking about product. Well, I said, well, I train, I help them get to different levels, but I also train by doing it. So they looked over my last 5 years before I sold the company, and I was in the top 10 in personal production of the annuity store every year. So what did I actually do besides train?
You did. You
I
actually
did.
went and did it. You applied it.
I did. And then when I would go out and I would do joint calls, they would, anytime in the fundamental process of asking a question, if they stumbled, all they said was, I'm being trained today. And they would look over to me and says, my trainer's just going to go from here. It didn't matter what part. And guess what I did? It didn't matter where the conversation was, I took over. Or I reversed it. And I said, when they were struggling, he says, I'm being trained today, me, by my counterpart here. And would you mind if I continued from this forward so they could look to tutoring me to improve? But in reality, what was happening? I was the trainer. But so that they never felt embarrassed in front of their client, I said, I'm the one being tutored today, and I'm being trained, and I want to know if you would permit me to explain. And I would take over, and I'd go through the process. It didn't matter where they were at, beginning, middle, end, the enrollment process, looking at the actual illustrations. It did not matter. But the system which we used was always 100% duplicatable. No matter where it was.
Now, let's talk about that here for a second. Now, one of the things here, we only got a couple of minutes left here before we have to go.
No
But
problem.
one of the things that we've had some requests from, a lot of people signed up for that event and weren't able to attend. And we've had other people that saw they missed it and they're looking to, are you going to do another one of these? And we've got great news that we're going to actually be having, we've got at least 6 of them planned, hope to have a couple more for this coming year of 2025. That we're going to have some of these training events like we had in Idaho here this last month. And we're going to have these all over the country. And we hope to have the dates rolled out and announced sometime in January. We want to get all the dates and locations picked out so that no matter where in the country are you this next year, if you want to come in and you want to learn the fundamentals, if you're a Medicare agent, a life agent, and you are saying, I would like to know how to do this, I would like to add annuities to my current business model. And when I say that, we always say you're right here, straight up and down. Let's just move you 1 degree off or 2 degrees off. And that's all the changes we want to make. And so if we can go through and do that, then we're going to able to help you become more of an asset protector. We're going to help you become more of a value to your clients and give you some additional tools to even help additional solutions for them. But the website is annuityfundamentals.com. There will be a link on the front page that we hope to have up there by January 2025, showing all of these different events that we're going to be having coming up this next year. So that if you want to come see us live, the space is limited. We're limiting it to only 100 agents per event. So, and a couple of them, they're not even going to be that big because the venues aren't quite big enough for that. But we're going to have 6 of those nationwide. Come on down and we'll be able to help you take the first steps to do that. And then, or also, if you'd like to get started even sooner than that, go to annuityfundamentals.com. There's a spot on there where you can book a Exploratory Call. You can visit with either Kylie or myself, and we will help you go through and show you how to get enrolled in these classes and start this immediately. Just a wonderful, wonderful system that's got 40 years of success. Kylie, anything to add to that? Did I miss it?
No, I mean that's great. What Doug and his systems have provided, both Ryan and I, are success in the annuity space. So we are going to give you those fundamentals. We're going to give you those words, sentences, phrases, that language, that fact finding, that introduction. We're going to give you things that you can actually implement into your business next appointment. And all it takes is buy-in from you. It really does. That's just the bottom line. Is Doug said it best when he came into the office. You can change your life, but it happens with you. He was very big into, I mean, he told me that my potential is unlimited, and I believe
still believe that.
I believe it too.
And I still
believe it too.
You haven't even scratched the surface of your potential. Not even scratched the surface. And yet look at what you've accomplished. But in my eyes, your potential literally is unlimited. And that's the key. You know, Ryan, you mentioned one thing for all those from health to wealth. What has been fun over my career as well is I've had many individuals who were doing the 1 million, 2 million, 5 million and more. And yet they were never taught the fundamentals. And when they came to a class, learned the fundamentals, they went, Doug, I never knew that. And they went back and they would call me. He says, you won't believe this, Doug. Those simple little fundamentals that I almost laughed out loud at, I just closed some cases I had never been able to close before. And they said, I'm a great closer. But those simple little things you were saying, they actually work. He says, unbelievable. And they'd call me and says, I want you to go through some of these cases. Look at the size that I've gotten to enroll by things that you taught that I laughed at when I was at the class, but they were so fundamentally correct that when they used them, they found out, you know what? It absolutely works.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Doug, we'll have to have you on again. You're such a gem, and it's such a pleasure to talk with you. And I'm sure our audience, if they don't have a page full of notes, then they're going to watch it again and get that page. So appreciate all of your wisdom and your knowledge. And thank you for changing my life and for changing Ryan's. I know we're both here because of you, and that's why Annuity Fundamentals is a thing, is because of Doug McDermott. So thank you so much for your time, Doug. It was a pleasure as always.
All right.